Hey there, my friends. Welcome to the Links to Messiah podcast, where we are passionate about teaching our children all about the connections between the Old and New Testament. I'm your host, Rachel Links Kushner, also known as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer of Links to Messiah. I'm so thrilled to have you join us today. Come along and learn how your family and children can grow in their faith as you discover the beautiful links that God reveals throughout Scripture about the history of His people and His Son Jesus, our Messiah. Hello to my new friends from the Jewish Road, Ron and Matt Davis. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Shalom, shalom. Good to see you.
Shalom. So happy that you're both here. Like I just said before we started rolling, I was like, all right, I'm getting two for the price of one.
We'll see what you say at the end of this whole thing and see
Yeah.
if you still feel that way.
Absolutely. So I discovered you guys on Instagram. It's amazing. Sometimes social media can be terrible, and
Mhm.
sometimes it can be really beautiful and amazing. And being connected with you has been really wonderful. I have been looking at your website. It's so great. Your blogs are rich and deep and very beefy, very meaty, like good stuff. But enough. Can you just each of you introduce yourselves a little bit? Maybe say your name so that our audience can get familiar with your voices, so we know who Matt is and who Ron is. So, Matt, would you like to begin?
I will begin. My name is Matt, and I am son of Ron. You'll hear most of the time, if you hear a cough, it's going to be him. That's why we have lots of cough buttons around here. They're strategically stationed all over.
Button working?
Yeah, it is. It's working there. We'll just keep it
I
going.
love it.
But yeah, we are Californians who got out and
Wait a minute. Don't sell me short.
and we made it not to the promised land of milk and honey, but we say we are in the land of horses and bourbon, which is close enough, and it's quite beautiful. So we are in central Kentucky, right down the freeway from you, which is great.
You
And
really are. We are so geographically close. I can't believe it.
yeah, it's great. So we decided after years and years, decades even of ministry, both
Mhm.
with the Jewish community and the church, we decided let's do something with all of this knowledge knocking around in our brains. And we
Mhm.
started a nonprofit a couple years ago called the Jewish Road. So that's me.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Ron, you're
Yeah.
up.
Well, yeah, I'm Ron. I'm the senior part of the group here. And he's right to an extent. We came here to Kentucky from California, but before California, I went to California from Brooklyn. And my whole family was from Brooklyn. My grandparents immigrated from Eastern Europe through Ellis
Okay.
Island legally
Yes.
and
Yes.
settled in Brooklyn. And I
Okay.
always say there we thrived, lowering real estate values. And we
That's
didn't know
good.
from any such thing, and we couldn't care less anyway. So,
Ron, we have that in common. My
really,
father and grandparents immigrated from Vienna, Austria in 1939.
oh,
My dad was 2 years old. They came through Ellis Island and they came on, is it October 12th? It was Columbus Day.
oh,
It's either October 12th or the 10th, 1939.
oh, wow,
They ended up in St. Louis, Missouri.
oh, wow. Mine came through. It was before World War One. My grandparents all came,
Okay.
you know,
Yes, that makes sense.
they were from Poland and Lithuania and Russia.
Poland, Lithuania, Russia. Okay, wow. That's so neat. Okay, and you landed in Brooklyn, California, and now
Now I'm in the
the
basement
homeland,
of some place
Kentucky.
in Kentucky, and
It's 5 below zero. We're
yeah,
dying down here.
yeah. How in the world did I get here?
I know, it's been so unusually cold, yes. Okay, I know very little about you, so that's why I am excited for this conversation, for us to get to know one another. And then, of course, I want to dive in deeper as to what your thoughts are as about why is it important to teach our children the Old Testament, the Jewish feasts, all that stuff. That's what Links Messiah is all about, really providing curriculum and activity boxes and different things for families with younger children so that they can learn and experience all of that real hands-on kinds of stuff. Okay, so Matt, I think if I read correctly, you're a Biola Talbot guy. Is that correct?
I am, and he's a Talbot guy too. So he
You
has
both are.
Yeah. I couldn't
Okay.
let him get ahead of me. I had to go back.
Good
Yeah,
for you,
I
Ron.
needed another master's degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have too many. Absolutely. So tell our listeners about the Jewish Road. What is it? All we know so far is it's a nonprofit. But what is your goal? What is your mission?
We really looked at this going through really most of our lives, my life at least. I was a pastor in a church in Orange County for a couple decades. And there was always this weird piece of all of the people at the church. They would say, "You're Jewish, but you're a pastor."
Mm,
So I would always get the questions of, "So when did you convert? Or when did you switch? When did you become a Christian?" So that
right?
was always fun to be able to explain that. And so we had to come
Hmm.
up with language for how does that get described? And then we'd have
Yes.
Jewish friends that would say, "You're a pastor, you're in a church, so you're no longer Jewish." And so, really,
Right.
the Jewish people pushed us out. The Christians said, "We'll take you." And then we get a lot of lost identity in that. And so we looked at all of this and what's going on between the Jewish people and the church? What's going on
Love that.
between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And really, as we were talking about, we said it's like a two-act play. And we said that every Jew in the world, it's like they bought tickets to this two-act play. And the Jews went to the first act, got up at intermission,
Mm.
grabbed a drink in the lobby, went home, and never saw the rest of the play.
And meanwhile, all of the Christians in the world bought tickets to the same two-act play. They got there late,
Yeah.
totally missed the first act, and went in, saw the second act, thought it was great, but the problem is the 2 groups crossed each other in the lobby, and they never saw each
Mm.
other again. And
Right.
so what we're doing is bringing both sides of that whole story together, so you get the full story from both ends.
Mm.
We want Christians to understand the roots of their faith so
Yes.
they can help Jews make better sense of Jesus. And for that, you need
Yeah.
both the Act 1 and Act 2, the Old Testament and the New Testament.
And really, a lot of well-meaning Christians,
Mm.
they want to love the Jewish people, they wanna reach the Jewish people, and so,
Yes.
well-meaningly, they will go up to a Jewish person, and they'll say, "Let me tell you about Jesus. He's your Messiah too," and they're gonna go right to Romans. They're gonna take the Roman road, and Romans
Mm.
3:23, Romans 6:23, Romans 9, Romans 10, Romans 11, we hit all of that, and the Jews will say, "That's not my book. Show me from
This
my
makes
book."
sense. Right.
If you are asking a Christian, just tell them from their book. Go to the Old Testament, go to Act 1 and share the gospel. Most are ill-equipped to do that. And
Mhm.
rather than taking them down the Roman road, we have developed the Jewish road. And we didn't develop it, it's been there all along, but we felt like this
Yes.
is a good way to be able to equip the church to be able to reach our people. Just like Paul said, I'm going to go out to the Gentiles to magnify, to grow my
Mhm.
ministry. And so
Mm.
it's one unified story. And really, we think that the second act really starts with the book of Acts, not the Gospels.
Mm.
Really, the Gospels, the life of Yeshua, Jesus on the earth, is part of the Old Testament, essentially.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
that's it. We're trying to bridge that. And there's hyperlinks. And I love what you're doing with links to Messiah to be able to bridge those. There's a
Yes.
lot of that New Testament knowledge that we are missing the backstory. And when we can open that up for people and say
Right.
all there, it blows our minds.
It does blow their mind. I love the visual picture of it's like a play, act 1, act 2, let's meet in the lobby. I really love that. I think what you all are doing is really remarkable. I think it's very much needed. I feel sometimes in the middle and unsure, right? Because I am a Jewish believer in Jesus.
Mhm.
I go to like I'm saying quote unquote a mainstream church, just like your neighborhood church, and a lot of times people don't know what to make of me and my husband, and they're very confused. I
Yeah.
once had somebody ask me, and this is not to embarrass anybody or shame anybody, but I once had someone ask me, "What does that mean you're Jewish?" Just total confusion, didn't understand. And I was like, wow, there is a big hole here that needs to be filled correctly.
We just before we talked to you, we were just doing recording a podcast with a Holocaust survivor. And one of the
Mm.
interesting things, so he's not a believer, but one of the questions that he was asking was talking about was who is a Jew? Most Jews don't know. And it's interesting because I think even if you were to ask the Jewish people who's a Jew, it's like what we'd say is you get two Jews in a room, you get three opinions. If you get one of my dad in the room, you get actually two or three opinions just by himself. He talks to himself constantly.
Sometimes you have to have an intelligent conversation.
Yeah.
That's good, Ron.
Not the first time we've heard that one before.
Hey, I got a new audience.
Yeah, new audience, same jokes. It's fantastic, but I'm still
You
here.
Yeah. Hey, back to the Catskills.
Yeah. So that's been our heart is how do we bring this together in such a way
mm,
that we can define who we are as a people, not just today, but who were we meant to be as a people? If we
mm,
believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we are his chosen people, what is our destiny? Where is this story pushing? Because
yes.
in many ways, I think unfortunately, the Jewish people have lost the plot and unfortunately, Christians, and especially those who have written off the Jewish people and say that we are the new chosen people, that everything that was promised to the Jewish people are now given to the
Mm,
church, they've also
mm,
lost the plot. And so
yes.
the story needs to be told, and we need to tell it in a winsome way that is going to draw both sides in and to be able to have
Yes.
a good witness.
Yeah, I think that's awesome and so important because I think it's very easy. And again, I don't want to sound judgmental when I say this, but it's very easy to cherry pick stories from the Old or New Testament, but not really see the connection between the two and to understand that's not two books, it's one big story.
Right.
Like, I love the children's Bible, the Jesus Storybook, because the
Mhm.
byline is every story whispers his name.
That's right.
Every story.
Yeah.
So
I recently
beautiful.
just spoke in a church in Georgia and went through Genesis 22 and talked about
Mm.
Isaac, Yitzhak, being a
Yes.
type of the Messiah, foreshadowing the Messiah that
Yes.
was to come. And the pastor's wife came up to me and said, I've never really heard that before. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
wow. And we don't ever want to, we're not doing that in an accusational way or a demeaning
Right.
way or condemnation. We always want this to
Right.
be an invitation. There is
Yes.
something to learn because we're still in the process. We're still
Yeah.
learning.
The stuff that you typically would just drive by, we want to give them an opportunity to stop along the side of the road, camp there, and look at it.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, it's an invitation, not a judgment. That's a great way. That's a great approach. It's a very loving and kind approach with the right heart. And I love that. Hey there, my friends. I'm interrupting this podcast for just a minute to tell you about the ultimate freebie packet for your family for the upcoming spring holidays of Purim and Passover. If you're looking for some fun and educational activities to keep your kids engaged, we've got you covered. You can head over to linkstomessiah.com and click on the resources tab to grab your ultimate Purim and Passover freebie packet. Dive into the world of Purim by creating and decorating your own crown, just like Queen Esther. Challenge your little ones with a thrilling Purim, maze, and crossword puzzle. Explore vocabulary related to Purim with the unique coloring page that we created just for you. But that's not all. Immerse your children in the Passover story with a Moses character coloring page, complete with Let My People Go written at the bottom. You can get creative with a Seder plate to color and cut out. And my favorite, embark on a Red Sea craft adventure. And for a dash of challenge, don't miss our memory game and our 10 plagues coloring sheets. It is an epic adventure of learning and fun for your kids. So visit the linkstomessiah.com website and click on the resources tab. Or you can click the link in the show notes. Now back to our conversation. Let me just ask you, let's dig into why you believe and think that it is important to teach our kids when they're little about the Old Testament and how the Old Testament can really be foundational for their lifelong relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. Some of the best teaching tools we have in the scriptures in the Old Testament, and you just follow the Jewish holidays and you can teach the kids a whole bunch of stuff. Like we would
Absolutely.
do Passover every year, and
Hmm.
my wife, Nana, the kids' grandma, would make she'd go to these
It's a
arts and craft
production.
stores,
It's a
and
whole
it's a
production.
whole production. We go to the U-Haul and get giant boxes, and those would
Uh huh.
become the dwelling places of the children of Israel in Egypt. and we give
Mm.
them red paint, not real paint, but paint that they could put on the doorposts and the
Yes.
lintels. She mapped out a whole
I
thing
love
of
it.
the Red Sea. We had Pharaoh. They acted out the whole thing.
Mhm.
And we would do that for the kids, with the kids at their Passover, telling the story of it.
Yes.
And they catch on really fast. And we bring the Messiah into it because he's an
Mhm.
integral part of it. And so we're
Absolutely.
connecting Act One and Act Two. I could tell you a story of one of the little grandkids. It just went boom in his head. And
Tell me, I wanna hear that story. Tell me the story.
see,
I'll see you guys later. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks. Nice meeting you, Matt.
yeah. So
Well, I guess I should say, okay, my dad was a pastor too, so I always get nervous, quote unquote, saying to a pastor, "Tell me a story," because I know how those go.
well,
So let's hear the
we'll make
Cliff's Notes
Yeah,
version.
we'll make it fast. You know,
Okay.
the we talk about the Messiah and the Passover, and in the Passover, as you probably know, you have the matzah, the unleavened bread,
Mm.
and we take out that middle piece of matzah, we break it, we wrap it up in white linen, and we hide it away. Usually,
Mm.
that piece of matzah is stolen by one of the kids, and we can't start the second half of the Seder
Oh.
till we get it back, right? I decided I didn't want to do that. So I took the kids and we made like a little tomb, a little cave out of cardboard box, and they decorated it and painted it and put branches on it. And I would take that wrapped up piece of matzah and put it in there and then cover it.
Oh, wow.
And while they're not watching, sometime during the meal, I would go
Mhm.
take the matzah out of the linen and just leave the linen in there. And then I would have the
Oh,
youngest, which at this
wow.
point was Izzy, he was like 5 years old, and I said, "Izzy, get the afikoman so we can continue the Seder." And he
Mhm.
went
Mhm.
and he stuck his hand in there and he's feeling around and he pulls out the white linen and there's nothing in it. And he looks at it and he says, "It's not here." And then
Oh,
it hit him and he said, "He's risen." And I said, "You got
wow.
it." And he was 5 years old,
Mm.
and he had the story. And so there's the connection between the act 1 and act 2. They got it. And that was the focus
Ron,
of the
that
Passover.
that was so beautiful. I have goosebumps. I'm tearing up just thinking about a 5-year-old child can understand the depth of what the Seder meal is all about. What a beautiful way to teach our kids to take the afikomen out, to take the matzah out. Very clever. Really great idea. And to have a tomb to put it in. The symbolism of that is so
We didn't
deep,
want the body stolen.
Right,
right?
yeah, that's one of the rumors that was going around about Yeshua's body was, "It's not here, it must have been stolen by the Jews," and so that
Yes.
narrative and even changing what that looks like in the typical Passover Seder, we wanted to be a little bit more true to form and tell the story, and that is the beauty, I think, of looking at the feasts and telling these stories, and
Yes.
I back in the day, I was a children's and family pastor, and so it
Okay.
was really beautiful to be able to bring this in. The church loved it, but we would do Hanukkah with them. So there are things we could spin the tops and we can make the latkes. It has to, we got to touch all of the senses when we're doing this, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So how do we bring all of this in so that they can experience it, not just hear it? Because I think,
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of Sunday school programs and even in Torah school, right? It's very audible. You have to be an audible listener. You have to. That's how we learn. But we really learn with all of our body. And so, how do we bring that in so our kids get it?
Oh, you are speaking my language. You
Yeah,
are speaking my language. I'm an educator by trade, mom, of course. But the boxes, the Links to Messiah boxes, and I'm not really here to promote them, but it is doing exactly that. My goal for every box is that it is an experience for the whole family and that it does touch on every sense.
mhm.
There's activities to get your hands in, there's things to listen to, there's recipes to make and taste and smell and all the senses. It's like a full body experience.
Yeah.
Every box whispers his name, right?
That's great.
As you know,
That's great.
as an educator, we would say that you hear and you remember. No, you hear, you forget, you remember, you do, and you understand.
That's new. I haven't
There's
heard that one before. That was good.
Stick around.
There's a new one. Way to go, dad. No, that's really true though. I think experiencing it is life changing, and then being able to teach it to someone else, to maybe a younger sibling or a friend or whoever it may be. Once you can teach something to someone else, you know you really understand it, right?
That's right. That's right.
Before we go, this will be my last question, but I still want to talk to you guys when we're finished. But you've already given actually one really solid way of a very practical way with the Seder meal and the tomb and the afikomen. I just love that so much. But do you have any other ideas, some practical ways that parents, grandparents, teachers can incorporate in their lessons or in their family home some of those Old Testament lessons and stories? How can they bring it in naturally?
I think that obviously we talk a lot about Lador Vidor from generation to generation, right? And when our kids
Yes.
have their bar mitzvah, we're passing down the Torah from one generation to the next generation. And one of a writer that I like is Henry Nouwen. He said one of the greatest gifts that you can give to your kids is the gift of you being a growing person yourself. And we know that more
Mm,
is caught than taught. And so as they see things, I think that there's almost sometimes, and I have teenagers, so if I just you have to start this stuff early. If I just went up to my
yes.
13-year-old and I pulled the covers off and I said, "Let's rise and shine and give God the glory," and we start singing that song, they're gonna hit me and pull the covers back over their head. But I can do it when they're 2 months old, and we have this pattern of doing it, but
Yeah.
the conversation changes over time, and, I love what it says in Deuteronomy 6, right? When you lie down and when you rise up and when you walk by the gate, right? It means all the time. We're
Right.
trying to pick up these moments, and I think that those moments for us and our kids have been, even more valuable than, "Hey, let's sit down and let's do a lesson." I think that these things,
Right.
it's you can sit down and you can do these moments, have these moments, but if you can keep pointing back to those and show them how these things are incorporated into everyday life, it's not just enough to know in our heads, but how do we actually now
Mm,
take that and live it out? When you look at Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your understanding. Well, when you hit a rough time, when you hit a speed bump in your life, that's the time where you could say, that verse that we memorized way back then, this is the time
yes.
to live that out. We're going to have to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, even though our understanding is telling us no. And so I think it
Yes.
just has to be a lifestyle rather than a moment. It can't be a
Mm,
Sunday morning or a Saturday morning thing. It has to be lived out.
that's a beautiful answer. What would you add to that, Ron, if anything?
Oh gosh. I think it is important that that our faith is conveyed not just by words, but by a whole lifestyle and a whole
Yes.
living out the things. Because if you don't do it, then you don't believe it.
Yeah.
Mm, well said.
And I'd add one other thing, Rachel, is I think
Sure.
kids understand the idea of a hyperlink. You know what a hyperlink is? Like when you're on a
Oh, yeah.
website and
Sure,
it's
sure.
usually blue and underlined. We know when we hit a hyperlink, it's going to take us somewhere else. If we realize that these stories in the New Testament in the second act are hyperlinked, if you can say, you know how this is a
Oh,
hyperlink, right? You can, if you push on this, and we talk about like John 7 a lot, when it says it was the feast of booths for the Jews. That is a hyperlink. And if you just pause and say, let's read this. Look where this hyperlinks. We hit that button and now we take
yeah.
them back to Leviticus 23, right? And then we can start walking through some of
Right.
this. So they start to see these connections that it is one narrative, it's one story.
A hyperlink. That's good. I'm gonna steal that. I will be using that. That is such a great way for a younger person, particularly, to understand. I guess
No,
most adults understand what a hyperlink is by now, but
no extra
what were
charge.
you No, no extra charge. Thank you, Ron. Matt and Ron Davis, I cannot thank you enough. This conversation, I feel like it's just the beginning of our relationship. I'm so delighted when I reached out on Instagram that you said yes. I was like doing a little dance in my living room and telling my husband. I was just so excited. So I
Neither
thank
one
you
of us
so
knew any
much.
better. So it's good.
I'm sorry, say it
Neither
again.
one of us knew any better, but I think it turned out all right.
It turned out okay. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you for being a part of the Links to Messiah podcast family. Your support means the world to us, and your feedback and engagement keep us going strong. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends and family. Let's continue growing this incredible community together. Until next week, keep reading the Bible to your children, keep their curiosity burning, and keep coming back for more tips to anchor your child's faith to Jesus, our Messiah. This is your host, Rachel Links Kushner, signing off with a big smile and a heart full of gratitude.